Servus and hello by Bianca K. Linger. Do you know what's happening in Austria right now? Sunday, 29th is our legislative election day. That day, Austrian citizens basically decide which parties they want to see in our National Council. By the way, the National Council is part of the Austrian Parliament, and that's usually where bills are prepared and deliberated. Also, usually the leader of the party that received most of the votes becomes our chancellor, which is probably, in terms of politics, the most important person in Austria. So in this video, I wanted to take the chance to give you a profound overview of the parties that we have in Austria. By the way, unlike in the United States, we have a ton. So I will focus here on, let's say, the 6 most important ones, of which 5 have been part of the National Council after the last election in 2017. So let's start out with one of the oldest parties in Austria, the People's Party, or in German, Österreichische Volkspartei, ÖVP. So it's a successor of a Christian party that was founded while Austria still had its Austro-Hungarian Empire. But well, after the Second World War, it became the ÖVP, how we know it today. It's a general center-right party, a bit conservative, and also it has been one of the governing parties most of the time, except not so much in the 70s, 80s. In the last election, the majority of Austrians voted for the ÖVP, so that's also maybe something you want to know. And in general, we can say that the ÖVP, in terms of economics, has a little bit more neoliberalistic tendencies. They are for reducing taxes and government spending. They are for partial privatization of certain services used to be owned by the government. More recently, also, it has been associated with taking a more strict stance against illegal immigration, like strengthening European borders, also making social cuts that mostly would affect immigrants and refugees. Well, they mostly argue work must still pay off, and if someone gets almost as much money and has never paid taxes in Austria than someone who actually works, work doesn't really pay off anymore, so there must be a little kind of difference again. The current leader is Sebastian Kurz. He used to be our chancellor after the last election, so he studied law, but he didn't graduate. Instead, he focused on his political career and was quite successful because he was actually the youngest leader with 31. However, he was ousted from office after he received the no confidence vote. That was also after this Ibiza scandal. Not sure if you've heard about it, but well, we'll not address it any further. Next party, the Social Democratic Party of Austria. So this party has also been quite important in terms of Austria's history and how we know it today. It's a center-left party and was founded while Austria still had the Habsburg monarchy. And usually the party had one of the ruling positions, although not that much after the last election. But in general, we can say that the party is said to be responsible for the social welfare system in Austria as we have it today, like workers' rights, paid holidays. And even today, they address very similar topics like raising minimum wage, social equality, and overall we can say that they pursue a little bit more Keynesian economics, where the government should actually spend and make sure that the money is equally distributed, because if the money is only with the rich, the poor don't have money to spend and the economy is not thriving. And even though the ÖVP and the SPÖ oftentimes work together in a coalition, this is still something that sets them apart. And usually I would say they are less about privatization of certain services that are in the government. And right now they're also advertising a lot, like money for healthcare. We have an aging population, so that's something that people might care about. And the current leader, Pamela Rendi-Wagner, also has to do something with healthcare. She's actually a physician, and she worked in research, and she's also one of the, oh no, not one of the first, she is the first female leader of the SPÖ. Next party, the Austrian Freedom Party, and if you're non-Austrians, there is still a chance that you might have heard about it. It's probably one of the most controversial parties. It's also descended from parties when we still have our empire. But yet officially was founded in 1956 by neo-Nazis However, from what I read, we also need to be fair. Those were not like real revolutionaries, and they're more engaged in local and regional politics and had more pragmatic ideas. And the Austrian Freedom Party is a right-wing party. It was quite successful after the last election, and it formed a coalition with the ÖVP because actually they had quite a lot of topics that kind of overlapped. However, the wording in the FPÖ tends to be a bit more populist. Overall, we can say that the FPÖ usually promotes preserving and German-speaking Austrian identity and culture. Well, sometimes they also used to address like Christian culture. Overall, they're also against illegal immigration, and they also pursue the idea that the social welfare should be for Austrian taxpayers. Also, what you need to know is that the FPÖ is for pro-smokers. So right now in Austria, we were liberal towards smoking. There are still areas where you can actually smoke in restaurants and bars. Many of the other parties want to ban it, but the FPÖ rather wants to preserve smoking. So yeah, and national security, giving more money to the Austrian military in order to stay independent is also a thing that they address. Hofer is the current leader of the FPÖ. He became the leader after Strache resigned after the Ibiza scandal. Hofer has an engineering background, and what you also need to know about him is in 2016 he ran for president. He was finally defeated by Alexander van der Bellen, which is kind of interesting because Alexander van der Bellen was a former member of a rather left-wing party, but it was a very tight battle. And overall, Hofer, his appearance seems less populist than the appearance of his predecessor Strache. So, next party, the Austrian Green Party. By the way, that's the party I was talking about. Alexander van der Bellen was once a member here. So it was founded in 1986, but the movement began a decade earlier, so it's an environmentalist party and also left-wing party. It was a movement, and they started to campaign against the nuclear plant Zwentendorf. They didn't want it to open. And finally, it wasn't open. By the way, I had a seminar there once. So you can just like look at it today, but nothing is happening really there. So not in terms of producing energy. So environment is a huge thing, environmental protection, also public transportation incentives, also financial support for certain green, renewable ways of producing energy like solar energy. And usually they also promote a lot of gender equality, close the gap between female and male income, and overall also transparency. So for instance, right now the posters often tell you clean politics and clean environment, meaning because there were quite some scandals in the past from other parties, so they try to promote transparency also. And in terms of economics, also they support like free education, government spending mostly. Who is the leader right now? It's Werner Kogler. So he was an economist prior to working for the Green Party, and there he already focused on environmental economy. And overall on his posters he mostly appears to be a guy with hands-on mentality. Maybe you need to know that they get, like last time they were not part of the National Council. They had some internal conflicts, and so not many people voted for them. But maybe it can change now. NEOS. It's the new Austrian Liberal Forum. It's probably one of the youngest important parties that we have here in Austria. So it was founded in 2012 by someone who used to be a member of the ÖVP, the People's Party. Overall, we can say their approach towards economy is also a little bit more neoliberal. Just like it is in the ÖVP, they are for open borders. They emphasize a lot the importance of the European Union. Also, in some certain topics, they are quite liberal, like same-sex marriage, for example. Also, right now, they promote a lot for education. So they want more authority for schools, for example, and I want less political and party interference in the education system. And also what set them apart sometimes from the ÖVP was they always tended to focus on transparency. So where does our money come from? That's also something they tended to advertise, and I would associate with the NEOS. Beate Meindl-Reisinger is the leader of the party since 2018. She studied law and European studies, and I think she has a sense of humor because she posts some funny stuff on Instagram. Now the sun is coming out again. That's terrible. Okay, we have one more party to go and then we're done. So, it's the JETZT called. JETZT means actually now in Austria. So actually, JETZT is the youngest party in Austria. So Peter Pilz, he's the founder of the party. He was a quite popular figure of the Green Party in Austria, but he decided to create his own party because he was not satisfied with how the Green Party addressed the topic of immigration, which was huge in the last election. So overall his party is rather left-wing, but not so much in terms of immigration. And also they, for instance, went arms embargo, so they don't want that the companies can send arms to countries where there's actually war going on. Right now they have another leader, and her name is called Maria Stern. She's a singer, teacher, and she used to be a single mom, and that was actually her incentive to start working in politics. We will see for which parties the Austrian citizens decide. Now I have questions for you. So for which party would you vote? No, I was just kidding. No. So in which country do you live? And which parties are currently governing this country? Which approaches do they take towards certain topics or economics? And can you also find similarities and contrasts between Austrian parties and parties in your country? Yeah, I know it doesn't work if you're Austrian, but you can still tell me what you think. Anyways, I'm happy if you stay friendly here on this channel. Thanks so much for watching. We'll analyze the outcome here as well.